Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Computer Letter and Arlon's second virtual training session. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get going as soon as possible. Just a quick few housekeeping tips for those that weren't with us last week. You're all on mute. This is if you go to the bottom of your toolbar, you can raise your hand if you wish to ask a question verbally, or you can click on the Q&A or in the chat bar at the side, and you can ask questions at any time. And Cal and I, James Smith, also here from Arlon, and I believe we have Dina and Rachel on as well, so from Computer Letter, so we can ask as many questions as you like. The session's for you. So without further ado, Cal is going to get on with a couple of tips and tricks around using a laser level. Then he's going to move on to his corner technique and show you how that's happening. And then finally, door handles with a pre-stretch and shrink. So without further ado, we're going to jump straight in and get some sticky stuff going down. So over to you, Cal. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks, everyone. I'm just looking at the numbers. Should we just give it a minute for a few more people to join, Cohen?
Yeah, we can. Maybe just give it one more minute and then we can get underway.
Yeah, I'm just gone 8:01 on my clock. Okay, but yeah, for everyone that's already on, welcome to part 2 of the Advanced Wrap Training Workshop with me, Callum James, Arlon's Technical Wrap Specialist for ANZ. Hopefully you would have caught last week's webinar. If you didn't, we highly recommend that you do go back and watch that. It's up on, I believe, Cohen is on Computer Letter's website. You can get a link.
Yep, that's correct. It's on the website.
Excellent. You can get a link and check out last week's session. So we did do a bit, Neil and I did a bit more of an intro and background last week. We're not going to do that today. So I do recommend you go back and watch that to cover off just some of the smaller details. We talk about SLX Plus and flight technology. But today we're going to be talking about, wrapping corners, tips and tricks with a laser level, and pre-stretch and shrink with door handles. I'm going to start, just while we've got the last few people joining, I'm going to throw a question out to you guys, and I want you to answer in the chat box with a yes or no. How many were you here last week? Were you here at the webinar last week? Just chuck a yes or a no, and that'll help me know, because I might reference some things from last week. So I'm seeing a lot of yeses, a few no's. Okay, this is great. Awesome. That's really good to know. So we're going to start with, all right, we're about 60. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Okay, I'm going to start with tips and tricks for using a laser level to help with print alignment. Now, I'm going to ask one more question. There was a person last week that asked specifically about the lasers, about doing something with the laser level. Is that person on today? I hope that they are. Laser levels, well, my one laser level that I own, I use for so many things. I love it. I love using it for setting up prints. It's just a cheap little laser level. I'll see if you can see I'll show you what it looks like on the panel soon. So this thing, first thing people say when they hear laser level is they think, oh, you can't use a level in signage or graphics because nothing's true level. And I agree with that most of the time. This laser level has a lock function, as most of them do. So I very rarely use it on true level. I'll lock it and I'll set what level is. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm just going to shift this camera up to my bi-load panel here. And you can see I've got this print. And Cohen, you can just flip between the two cameras, whichever view is best. I've got this print here with the Arlon logo on it. It's not actually printed in, this is just stuck over the top, but we're doing the best with what we've got in lockdown. So if you're familiar with an I-load panel, you know it's got all these recesses. We covered how to wrap the recesses last week. Today we're just going to talk about, on this panel, print alignment. So let's say I've got a whole print on the side of the van. So just imagine that this is a full van and this print is the full side of the van with the logo printed in it. We want to get the logo in an exact position, and we want to do it quickly and accurately. So one thing that I used to do back in the day was I would pin the print up and just throw a sort of yes or yeah, I understand in the comments if this is familiar to you. We would sort of feel around, find body lines and edges and get a tape measure and sort of hook it into body lines to check. You'd sort of find a bit of a fold there, hook the tape measure in, and you'd be looking around, finding straight lines, checking the print like that, which there's nothing wrong with doing that. Someone said yes, haha, yes. There's nothing wrong with doing that, it works. It's just a bit fiddly and annoying. You can get the print perfectly aligned doing that, but then what happens when you actually take the print back off? You need to peel the backing and put it back on again. You have to get it back in the same position. So that's when people are going to start using tape tabs and markers and stuff. That's great. But when your print covers the entire panel and it goes off every single edge, that can be quite annoying. Because to get to your tape tab, you've usually got to wrap around a corner, or if the tape tab's on the front bonnet or around the front guard or the front bar, you don't know if you're in place until you're already on the panel. So I'm going to show you how a laser level massively speeds this up. So this logo was not made to fit this panel because it was printed prior to this. But let's just assume that the Arlon word, I need that, say, 50 mil up off this line, right? So I'm just going to quickly, I'm going to use the 100 mil mark on the highlight and just put a little, actually, I'll put it 40 mil up. So just using a whiteboard marker, 100 mil mark on the highlight. And then I'm going to just get a real quick, actually, I'll just guess for argument's sake, that's center. So then what I do is I've got this laser level set up on a tripod, and I'm going to just turn it on, and hopefully you can see that line coming through. I'll just turn some of the lights away. Yep. And that's actually, so this is on lock now. So this is already, it was already pretty straight. So what you do is adjust it to hit your lines. And for argument's sake, that's good enough today. So I've got my center line on the vertical and my horizontal line on the other two marks. So I hope you can already see where I'm going with this. So now, let's just say we've decided that's where it's going to be. That's the center of the logo and that's the height of the text. We can pretty much now, with two people, it helps a lot with two people, grab this print, peel the backing off, and as we go to place it on, we know that all we need to do is align the text to the laser and the center point of the logo, and we are in exactly the right place. So while the laser takes a minute or two to set up, once it's set up, it's a massive time saver. So I've done full 5 meter prints, sides of vans, and two people just peel the backing and just whack the whole thing on without, and you just get it right the very first time. Is that new to anyone? Was anybody seen that before? Let me know in the comments if you've seen this before, or if you use a laser to do this sort of thing. I can't align a print without a laser now. Well, I can, but I don't. I just love doing this technique. So that's one way to use the laser. And I'm going to show you that again on another panel after this.
You just made a sale on a laser, Cal.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
They're really cool. I use them a lot for wall graphics as well. Because it's got the vertical line, I'll start this at the right, say if I'm going left to right on a wall and it's a 1370 print, I'll start this vertical line 1360 from the wall and get your straight line off of the average of the floor. So not again using true level, because buildings are very rarely level. Then when you set your first wall drop up, you set your vertical line on that, and you should have 10 mil fold into the first corner. You never want to butt into the first corner, because if that corner isn't true, then it'll throw you out of alignment. So wall drops I don't even think about doing without a laser now, just because of the accuracy. You just can't beat it. So that's one.
Remember the building you had in Sydney, Cal, that had major subsidence that nobody told you about until you dropped the graphics down?
Yeah, the old.
They
took the measurements from. They took the measurements from only one side. So that's another tip while we're on it. Always measure both sides or multiple points of walls, because they measured the short side and the long side, and the short side was 50 or 60 mil. Longer or shorter, whichever way. So that's one way to do it. I'm going to show you another quick way. Now I'm going to actually release the laser from its lock now, and this is one exception to the rule where it can be on true level. So let's say we're going to, for whatever reason, we want the print on an angle, right? Because that's the design. Let's say it's going to strike through it or whatever, but it's a specific angle. What we do then, we've got this in place. So we've checked it. We've looked on a mock-up. We know that all our points hit. It's in place, but we just want a quick way of aligning it back up. And straightness doesn't matter on this one. It's just about what we set it to. So strike the laser onto it. And then this is now just taking a reference point. So I'm just going to mark, and I've got a whiteboard marker here, but I'd normally use a China graph, but this is what was closest. Mark your cross and your vertical. So now all this laser is done. It's not giving me straight or anything, but it is now marking, it's a registration point for where my print needs to go again. So that's where, again, you'll take this off. I just will say, don't knock the laser. So I have had this set up before and had all my side ready to go, and someone's walked past and moved the tripod out the way because they thought it was in the way. Maybe put a sign up or a bollard around it. Because once your laser is in place, you don't want to have to set it up again. So again, you can see, instead of lining up to the text now, we just line back up to our China graph marks. So this is super quick way of realigning prints. And in this instance, yeah, the laser isn't telling us what's straight or true. It's just taking a snapshot of the position that we already have. It's just remembering that position. Has anybody got any questions on lasers? I'm going to do one more thing with the laser. Yes.
A couple of questions about brands. Does it matter, Cal? Do you have a brand that you prefer?
I'm sure I could have got a much better one. This I got off eBay, to be honest, and it costs $60. And if you want to see it, it is, I don't know if that's going to focus.
Back a bit. Back a bit more.
Back a bit.
No, we might need to take a photograph and put it up on that up later.
Yeah, but you'll recognize it just by it's the one that looks like this. It's $60. Anyway, the criteria that's important is that it has to lock. So I have seen a couple of lasers that are forever free floating. They don't have a lock function. They will only do half of what you need them to. Someone said, set the laser up back to front of a vehicle. Oh, absolutely. Oh, that's another point. Great point. If you've got a ute or a Hilux or something like that, you've got text across the body, but then it might have the molded tub, so not the aluminium tray, but the body tray. That's got the Tritons have a few different angles on them. It's always hard to get the text straight on the back. So once you pull your tape measure up from the bottom of the doors, get your marks straight across your doors. That's your text across the cab. Then strike your laser to those marks, and it will beam the light across the back of the tray as well. So that way you can just slap text on and it's perfectly aligned to the text on the cab. But yes, I think that comment was about stripes, stuff like that. Yeah. Get creative with it. You can use it for so many things. I would set the laser up at the front of the car, dead center, take measurements of the top of the windscreen, bottom of the windscreen, bonnet, just get as many marks as you can for accuracy, then strike the line across the front of the car. If you set the tripod up high, it'll go across the roof as well. And then from there, you've got a center point you can measure out from that for doing racing stripes, body stripes, right across the whole car. And you can put your knifeless to the laser. It will show you straight in and out of the bumper, in and out of the back, over the spoiler. because if you obviously lay a flat stripe, it will turn corners depending on the angle, whereas the laser doesn't. And you put your knifeless tape to the laser and you get like laser perfect racing stripes. It's awesome. So if anybody's doing stripes by hand, doing knifeless stripes, and you don't have a laser, go and get one. They're worth their weight in gold. All right, any other questions on the main panel? I'm going to jump over to my guard panel here. And Cohen, I'm just going to do a camera swap. So if you want to not be on this one that's spinning, I'll just move this to another tripod and we'll keep going. So the next piece that we're going to do, I'm going to bring the camera over to this. This is my front guard panel, and you might recognize that's off a Mazda 2. And not an overly remarkable car in general, and not crazy to wrap. But this guard in particular, I really do like. It's got some really interesting sort of curves and body lines and stuff like that. So I really actually do quite like demoing on this. It's got a lot of sharp corners, as you can see here, which are great. Massive, yeah, really tight. That corner in particular, really, really tight. So I'm going to show you in a minute how I do my corners on this. Just bear with me. Neil, do you just want to chat for a moment while I set this camera up?
The product you're using today is SLX Plus for all of these demos, Cal. I know everybody that were here last week would have seen some of the features and benefits. But one of the things that you just showed there, when you're moving it around underneath the laser and you've got the backing paper off, the release paper, easy to slide, and that's going to be important. So if anybody hasn't yet seen the features and benefits of SLX Plus, suggest please give your computer letter rep a call and get some of that product, and maybe get a few sheets of samples if you haven't tried it. So that would be good. So Cal's using SLX Plus, I think, for everything today, Cal, including later on when we do the pre-stretched door handles, etc.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
So for anyone that isn't familiar, that is our flagship premium digital film. So now I'm going to jump onto this guard here. Just going to magnet this on for a second. This is a perfect example. I'm not even going to set the tripod up for this one. Let's just say that's where I'm just checking that that's covering, but for all intents and purposes, that is where I want the guard panel to go. And hopefully you can see that laser there.
Yep.
This is I'm going to do a real sort of demo of what this would look like. Peel the backing off and chuck this straight on. Of course, this is always much easier with two people, but even when you don't have two people, oh, look at that.
So you've done that before.
This stuff, you know, I've wrapped whole sides of a van on my own in this. You do want to sort of be careful, but you can reposition this stuff thanks to flight technology. It's really, really easy. So you can see, yeah, you get the gist of the laser there. So that's the last of the laser demo for now. I'm going to move on to wrapping corners, but feel free to keep asking questions, bring up the laser as we go. So wrapping corners well is something that I think is very important. There's a few different ways that you can do corners, and there's sort of faster ways, there's commercial ways. I'm going to do wrapped, a little bit of pre-stretch and shrink, but this is the way that I do pretty much all my corners. I'm not going to cover off every single other technique, but I am going to just show you how I do sort of an average corner. So I'll just start by getting the bulk of this panel pinned on. Okay, now I'm just going to actually zoom in on, I'm going to move this camera around here. Can you switch Callum to the other camera? I'm just going to see if I can get a bit of a zoomed in view.
And just for everybody's benefit, I'm sure those that are in New Zealand and in Auckland still in lockdown, Cal's in Victoria still in lockdown. This is not quite his garden shed, but certainly he's working out of home. He's not got access to some fancy recording studio.
That's correct. Thank you for that, Neil. And we did have to sort of adjust my camera setup. So hopefully you can see that all right there. So first of all, just let me know, can you see this corner okay?
Yep.
I will do a close-up to show you this a bit better as we go. So the main thing I want to start with saying is that whenever I'm wrapping a corner, I want to be ready and prepared for that corner at least 100 mil away from it, if not 200 mil. So what I don't want to do is wrap all the way up to the corner and then start pulling it round. Actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to move this, get this one even closer. Yeah, that's better there. You get catch a little bit of the reflection. So what I don't want to do, and what I used to do, was I'd wrap up to the corner and then I would start heating and start pulling it round. And let me know if you still sort of do that. You go right up to it and then deal with it. The reason why that's not such a good technique is because the vinyl all along the flat here is under zero tension at all. And then you get to the corner and then you start pulling, and you can heat that and wrap that whole corner with heat, but it means that from the flat to the back is the part that's under tension. And I don't want those sides to be under tension at all. I want it to be the opposite. So I want to add a bit of stretch to the flat because that's at zero risk of failure. It can't pop out of there, but it can, as we know, pop back off of an edge or off of a corner. So I'll show you what that looks like. So even if you've applied up to it, now you wouldn't do this with some films, but with SLX Plus, it doesn't matter. I've applied up to it. I've realized, hey, I've gone too far. I want to pop the film back. So I bring it back. And now I'm at least 200 mil away from the corner. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of heat. Firstly, I'm going to see if I pin my thumb right on the edge, I can see the outside of the corner. But if I bring my thumb in 10 mil, I know that and pick up the vinyl and don't let go of it, I know that I'm holding 10 mil in from the corner. So the reason I do that, and if anybody happened to be at Hamilton a couple months back when I managed my one trip over there, you might have seen me do this. Now that I've picked that up, I know where the corner is, or 10 mil in from the corner. So I don't let go of that position now. And that's when I start introducing just a bit of heat. And I do just want to warm sort of the whole area up. And as it starts to warm, I'm going to start to dig my thumb in a little bit and pull on it. And I know I'm sort of blocking that view there. I'm going to dig my thumb in to pull on it. And it will start to ripple up and it'll look a bit funny, but you'll see how quickly that is, how easy that is to fix. And you can do this multiple times. So I'm pulling and tensioning, and I do want some of the shape of my thumb to get imprinted into that corner. Not all of it. So it's a little bit of a curve from my thumb put into it. It's a little bit of stretch this way. So I'm sort of doing a bit of everything to get this corner. And this is the pre-stretch. It's not your conventional pre-stretch, but it is technically a form of pre-stretch. And again, beauty of flight technology, if I'm not happy, I just pop it up and do it again. So there, I'm really happy with that tension. Now I've got to, oh, sorry. Now I pull out the lines going the other way, and the rest of that completely flattens out. So now I'm going to apply the flat and right up to the corner. Now the corner is essentially pre-loaded with stretch. And can you see how it's sort of puckered up on itself? It's really sort of standing up. So I'm just going to reset that really quickly. Didn't notice the first time. Okay, so there you can see it's sort of folding back on itself. Now the reason I want that folded back on itself, because if it's coming back at me, I know that it will also fold around the other way. Okay, that's the corner there. And what you'll see as I go around, see the corner there? Right, I'm going to add a bit of heat now. So that's got the pre-stretch loaded into it. I'm going to just reintroduce a little bit of heat, and hopefully if you can see that all right, you'll see the vinyl shrinking back. So I'm going to start with the top edge. Oh, now another important thing, now that I've got the corner preloaded with stretch, I don't want to have applied any of the side, the return edge yet. Okay, I'm going to do that last because I want to take everything from the corner and send it back along the return edge. And by that, I just mean that 5 mil little back edge. Because if I were to seal off all my edges and bring them to the front, I trap any excess vinyl there, and it's giving me nowhere to spread it out. So I'm going to just, and this is low fan, high heat, but low fan, and I'm barely going to use any at all. Just on that top edge, I'm going to relax the film. And I'm actually going to pull it back and away from the corner and send any excess upwards and away from the corner. So I'll switch to the handheld quickly. So you can see that top edge there. So that is the edge of the very edge of the panel. Tiny little pocket there. So I'm sending any build up from there, I'm pulling and sending across there. Now I'm going to do the bottom bit. Hopefully that's, excuse the camera movement, guys. It's hard to sort of capture this. All right, that's the bottom edge. And again, I'm going to just soften it. And the important part of this is that it takes any stretch that was there out. And because the vinyl isn't already wrapped onto the panel, it's sort of, see how it's like, it's in midair at the moment. Well, it's on the flat, but it's not wrapped around the back. So all the stretch from the flat outwards isn't stuck to anything. If it was tacked onto the panel, it may not be able to shrink back because it's going to grab onto something else. You always want to make sure it's not stuck down because that will inhibit the shrink part of pre-stretch and shrink. So just warm it, let the film do what it needs to do, relax, shrink back. And I will just help hold it, but I'm not pulling on it. I'm not adding any stretch. I'm just holding it. So now hopefully that shows up okay. Can you guys see that corner okay?
Yep.
Let's go back to the hand.
Once you're out of lockdown, Cal, we'll get you another cameraman.
Give me a camera crew if you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I need. If it weren't for lockdown, I would have got James here to be moving the camera into the best angle at all times. So yeah, I'll switch to the handheld, Cohen. You can see, hopefully, that the vinyl is wrapped right around that corner. Oh, it is a bit dark under there. You can see that bottom edge is all wrapped. The main part is obviously the outside of the corner. And because I shrunk that on, I know that there isn't stretch left there. There's a little bit of stretch in this part, but that doesn't matter at all. So does that make sense to everyone? Has anybody got any questions on that technique? And I'm going to do it again on the even sharper corner as well.
So no questions at the moment, Cal, but maybe an interesting one might be to ask what technique are they currently using?
Well, that is a good question. Well, is anybody going to give this a go, or is everybody sort of happy with how they currently do their corners? I'd love to hear how you guys do it, because I mean, this is what works for me. This is my preferred way, but I know there are multiple ways to sort of go about this sort of thing. So now I'm going to do this really sharp one. Bear with me. I'm going to raise up my tripod.
So Thomas says he's going to be using it today, Cal. So he's going to step outside directly after this and give it a go. Just for anybody that's on the call, if you have any questions that don't crop up today, feel free to contact Computer Letter, and via them we can put you in touch with Callum. And again, he's here to help.
That's exactly right. Happy to go through this again. And one thing I will say, if you're trying this out, actually, Cohen, you can probably switch back to front view now. If you're trying this technique out, just know that you don't have to get it right the first time. Just try it a few times. If you feel like you pulled it too far, someone uses the same, works beautifully. Excellent. That's what I love to hear. I see people sort of trying things and then it won't work and they'll just push on. But the beauty of, especially if you're using SLX Plus, just lift the film back, shrink it, relax it, and just have another go. You don't need to commit to the first attempt. So this one here is a little bit different because the panel down here, I can only really peel that back 100 odd mil from there. I could have pre-stretched this before I applied any, but it doesn't matter. This is enough anyway, but you do want to give yourself the maximum. So don't apply up to here and then just do the pre-stretch from there. Give yourself as far as you can comfortably. So again, add a bit of heat. Well, first find the corner with my thumb, or this time I'm going to use my fingertip for where I'm standing. Now this one I'm going to stretch a bit more. Because it is a sharper corner, so I do want more pre-stretch added to it. Apply the flat now, and as you can see, I'll just flick to the handheld. The vinyl here is naturally folded out at that angle now. Normally it would be sitting flat, but it's got so much sort of built up stretch in it that it's causing it to pucker out like that. That shape is really important. And again, I did say this before, but I just want to repeat it. That shape facing outwards is what I want to see, because it will also be that shape just in reverse when I fold it and flop it over the corner. There's a reason why I actually like to have this folded up, because when it's up in midair, it's not stuck to the panel. This is why I don't like to just pull and wrap round in one go, because the vinyl just pins and then it just adds the stretch to the end. So I'm actually just going to show you with this one. I'm going to add a bit of, I'm going to reintroduce a little bit of heat while it's up in midair. And let some of the shrink happen before I even pull it around. Let's see if we can see this okay. You're going to see it really fold up. So this now is, I don't know if that doesn't really show it. I'll go back to the handheld. It is really puckered up on itself. Like that's the angle that is coming off of straight. So that's great. The more sort of aggressive that curve is, the more I know it's adopting the shape of the corner. So then you do need to give a bit of heat to just caress it around, but this heat is just to soften the film to help it go around. It's not to add any more stretch. So nice and tight in on that corner. If I saw that question, if the corner pokes through the vinyl, you're either pulling, it's too hot and you're pulling too much. It won't poke through doing this technique because the film, if you can see the edges of the panel here, I'll just kind of annoyingly put a dark bit of vinyl right there. But all the stretch was placed on the flat here, on the main body of the panel. So the vinyl, once it gets round the corner, is actually, you know, and especially once I reintroduce heat, it's not stretched. It does shrink back. So if you heat and pull in one go and yank it round the corner, you can absolutely tear through the film. But that I would consider the, yeah, it's all relaxed. Perfect. Relaxes a great.
And Rick asked, great pre-stretch, but can be difficult on graphics where lines to keep lines straight. So I guess it's the fact that you're only stretching right there at the final corner.
Yes, and so I would say this is a great time to mention design, because I know, you know, if you've got a designer or you do design yourself, or if you do your own design, great. If you've got a designer that understands wraps, then they are invaluable. Like, do everything you can to keep that designer, because so many designers don't understand the three-dimensionality of a vehicle. Ideally, you want to avoid, I look at a car and I know which areas to not put a detailed print or to avoid a straight line. You know, the corners on recesses of eye loads, don't put a stripe right across the corner. Try to move the stripe to the flatter area, or the area where it's a one-directional recess, not multi-directional. So this print was purposefully done with all these boxes, but I would, if this was the real job, I would say to the designer, hey, don't have the boxes go all the way to all the corners, or space them in such a way that I'm always bang in the middle. This corner here is not a bad example. I'm really happy with that. And I've got the corner of 3 squares there. You can see the triangles of the squares. There's a tiny bit of line distortion, but it's not a lot. The reason why it's so minor is because I've spread it over that area. And back in the day when I was learning this, I did only give myself 50 mil. What can happen there is you still get the same amount of stretch, but percentage-wise, you've doubled the stretch in that area. Even though you've only 10 mil is 10 mil that you've grown, but you either start with 100 or you start with 200. So keeping the percentage of stretch down is key. The other thing that can happen is if you go from too small an area and you heat, some of it's applied, some of it isn't, you can get a stark color dropout right on the line. So a tip to avoid that is when you start warming the film, before you start pulling, just apply over the edge where it was pinned, 10 or 15 mil, as you start to pull, and that will fade. I mean, there shouldn't be color dropout, but that will just help eliminate any chance of that happening. It's when you basically pull it up, heat it, and pull that you're going to get color dropout. So yeah, if you can avoid lines on sharp corners. Now, I don't expect that this is how you do every single corner and every single job. If it's a it's a cheap, if it's a in and out in a few hours kind of job, you may just get to the corner, nick it with your knife and fold it around. That's totally fine if that's appropriate for that job. But this technique is just when you want to get your corners a bit better. And you may only do this on the top front few corners. On this guard, I might do these two and a couple on the top and then not do it on the lower bits because no one's ever going to see it. So I'll bring this camera in nice and tight. Hopefully you can see that. So again, same thing again. Bring the heat back in. And I'm just holding that and guiding it. I'm not pulling on that at all, but I'm just, now I'm pulling slightly, but I'm pulling back and away. So as long as I'm pulling it to hug the corner, that's okay because I'm helping adhere it to the panel. I don't want to pull out and away because that creates stretch that's going to want to shrink back in a bad way. It's going to want to peel the vinyl back off. So as long as I'm pulling down and angles away from the corner, I'm actually helping wrap that corner. It hugs the corner even more. Bring this around here. Again, a bit of heat across the top. It's going to warm quite a wide area across the top because I do want to send this build up out and away. So I'm going to start with a couple of squeegee strokes out and away from the corner. Bit more, soften up the corner. I know you can't see this, but I'll zoom in with the handheld after this. Again, pin the corner, pull down, behind and away, and send any excess build up backwards or away from the corner. So just give it one. I always like to just finish with a bit of heat and just let it sit and then let it cool. And then I'll just sort of help press it down. So last thing you want to do is go to all that length, effort of doing this beautiful technique and then add stretch at the last point. So I'll just see if I can get nice and close up there. So even there, I've got the corner is orange. There's a little line there. You can see it's turned a bit of a corner going over the edge, but it could be a lot worse. It's not completely a wobbly line. And then right around the back there. So I don't approach corners any other way now. It's just, I just can't. So, I mean, I still do release corners, but if it needs any sort of wrapping, this is how I will approach it. Does anybody have any questions on that? Or did everybody see that okay? Or need me to do another one? Nothing coming through? All right, well then, I will.
No questions at the moment.
Excellent. I'm going to now set up, and it's going to just take me 30 seconds. I'm going to move over to our door handle station. Neil,
Question on trimming, Cal, but I don't know if you'll maybe want to come back to that when you move on, or you're going to do it there.
Yeah, ask away because I'll if I get around.
So any tips on trimming?
Yes, I mean that's pretty. Trimming is very broad. There's a lot, but do you mean in relation to the part I just wrapped? Because I can. I'll just trim that. Let's do that.
Yeah. So could you trim up what you've currently done? Is the question there?
Yeah. Okay. Tips for trimming. So say if I'm going to. Okay, where are we down here? Right, so across this top edge, one thing that I like to do whenever I'm doing a trim is, I mean, you could say if I'm going from here to down here, I could just put the blade in and start going for it, which is fine. I'll probably be able to complete the trim okay, but I prefer to use another hand and I'll release the vinyl and hold on to the bit that I'm trimming off. I don't want to pull it out, but I want to pull it directly sort of perpendicular to the angle that I'm trimming. Holding that tension really just helps prevent, I don't know what you guys call it, we call it chainsawing, when the blade starts to do a wavy cut and it looks like you've cut it with a chainsaw. So my main tips would be always use a brand new blade or a freshly snapped blade. I just put this one in so I know it's nice and sharp. You know, some people try to get maximum life out of their blades, whereas on a wrap I'll go through 5 or more full blade changes. I like to keep it as sharp as possible, and you should when you're doing trims. I want to add a little bit of pressure of the flat side of the knife to the back edge, but it's sort of flat pressure outwards. I don't want to angle too much. If you angle too far inwards, you're going to dig into the paintwork. If you angle outwards, you're going to drift off the line. So you do want to try to keep the knife nice and flat. Another thing is I don't want it to be at right angles, cutting like this. I try to get it as low as it's comfortable to hold it. So it's a nice slight angle that the blade is cutting on. So this is a little bit of an awkward angle. I hope you can see it. And I'm just helping, I did a straight arrow. It is going slightly out. So I pull slightly away, but the majority of the tension is directly back from the corner. Then when I get to these sort of fiddly areas, I do sometimes give it a little bit of a slicing action, just to help me round. If you just put your knife in and pull, you know, as you know, it can sort of jump and cut a little bit too fast. So I will sometimes just, if I feel like I'm snagged, or, I mean, this panel in particular is not smooth back there. It's been chipped and there's a little, you know, the panels don't come out perfectly at the back. So sometimes there's little bumps or bits of paint or whatever. So I will often just give it a little up and down, a little slicing motion, rather than just pinning the knife and pulling, because that can, obviously it can jump and slip. I'm kind of getting, it's a bit awkward down there, but you hopefully get the idea. And then of course, smooth over it. I'll go to the handheld. So I haven't gone right under, but you can see that couple of little divots are actually part of the panel there. So, and another good tip for trimming is to try to brace your hand that has the knife. So if I'm doing a cut, I've generally got another part of my hand on the panel. I'll often hold the knife and I'm not giving you guys a finger, have a fingertip out, and that's the resting point. Actually, go to the main camera, Colin, it's probably a better view. I'll sort of brace my hand there and slide, and then this pivot is my sort of bringing the knife in, and I can slide and then bring the knife back out. Some people like to trim with a glove on. I sometimes think that's too much slip. It's not enough friction. You can kind of get a nice balance of slide and grip with your fingertip. And I have been known to brace my hand with another hand. If for any, you know, you just got to do what's comfortable for where you are. And this guard's off the car. If this was on the car and I hadn't taken the headlight out, I wouldn't even have access to this edge. So the trim would, again, you just have to adapt to whatever is in front of you. But hopefully that answers that question on trimming.
So on the same thing, Cal, whilst we're in that same area of those edges,
oh, yeah.
Question is, do you use primer edges fold over to hold the vinyl?
No.
Or is SLX Plus that good? I think the person's asked the question has answered their own question. Yes, it's that good.
Look, there's only a couple of instances where you should ever use primer, and that's when the paintwork is compromised, it's old, it's dodgy, and you just have to get the vinyl on. And anytime when you're using primer, I would be telling the customer, I have to use primer here because your paint is too chalky and old or whatever. But on a new car, there's zero reason to use primer, in my opinion. If you need primer, it's generally because the vinyl's there's something wrong. It's a crutch to hold up the vinyl. So yeah, I don't think that you should use it. It's not recommended.
Just before you move off that piece that
Oh,
you've
yeah.
done there, Cal, what about post-heating over this area when you've finished it?
Yeah, good question. Post-heating, well, a couple of things. I give the whole panel a post-warm, and that is to just help speed up, help relax the film down, help speed up the wetting out process, which we talked about in webinar 1. It also is a really good technique to, if you have missed a section, which we all do, and there might be a little bubble, it might be sitting really flat. If you dust over the whole panel with a bit of warmth, that bubble will gently expand and it'll bring it to your attention. So sometimes you just may not see it based on the angle of the light, whatever, but you can see it when it expands. Just make sure you keep the heat gun moving, because if you do go too slowly and it's too hot, you can burst that bubble. It can expand too quickly and burn through. But I generally warm over a panel as soon as I've finished it. It's just good technique. I like to know that one panel's buttoned up before I move on to the next one. So edges post-heat to 95, and then the middle area, add 20 degrees to whatever it is. So maybe if it's 20, get it up to 40 or 50 degrees. And that happens really quickly. It's obviously getting it up to 90 that takes a bit longer, which you just need to do for the edges or anywhere where it's stretched. So yeah, 95 degrees Celsius plus.
Okay. All right, and then there's one question. We'd love to see the bottom corner of a door being wrapped. Mine always end up wrinkly, and I guess, but then they say go on to say perhaps this technique will sort that out. I guess that's the thing. Give Cal's techniques a go, or maybe on your own vehicle or a spare panel. But if you do run into problems, then yeah, give him a shout. Contact him via computer letter. He's always here to help you.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll get back to that person just to confirm which corner they're referring to and stuff. But yes, can definitely cover that off. I'm not set up to do that here though, unfortunately. So
bigger studio.
Yeah, bigger studio.
Okay, so we're moving on now. Cal, I can see you setting yourself up for door handles. Is that correct?
That is correct. We're moving on to door handles. So I've just got 2 cameras here pointing in at a door handle setup. So just bear with me while I adjust. Now, again, anybody that was in Hamilton might have seen me do this already. Okay, so what I've got here is these couple of clamps. Yay, Hamilton. Yeah, that was fun. That was great. Thanks to everyone that came to that event. The plan, for anyone that wasn't there, I didn't mean to single out Hamilton. That was just one trip that made it and then lockdown again. So my plan was to get to all of New Zealand, and it still is. So I'm hoping we'll open up soon. So these clamps here I got off eBay, as I love to do. These were $5 each or something like that. You can get far better clamps than this. You can get, Justin Pate often talks about one that clamps to your bench, and then it's got a ball and socket joint in it. The whole thing rotates. It's like a mini vise. If you can get one of those, great. But this does the job nicely for what we're going to do here today. So you could, and I'll often wrap a handle like this. I'll set it up flat, just anchor it in. But for today's demo, I've actually made this little jig. So I'm going to prop the handle up because I want to get the camera angle up and underneath. So I'll just throw this into here. I'll just set this with my drill. Okay. What I'm going to do is tape the top of this down. And this shot might be better from the other camera. Yeah. So I'm just going to tape the top of this down to hold that on there. And it also gives me a bit of, is it going to come into focus? Here we go.
Yep.
gives me a bit of putting tape on this bit gives me a bit of non-stick properties to this bit of plastic, because that is an area where the vinyl is going to want to stick and potentially grab onto. Or I call that fouling. If the vinyl fouls onto something else, it's like if you're wrapping a bonnet and it sticks to the headlight, it's fouling on the headlight. So I'm going to bring the light in. Oh, there we go. That looks nice. You guys can see sort of just up under the handle there. And Cohen, just flick between whatever shot is more accessible. Right, so I'm going to start this little demo with a bit of white vinyl, just so I can draw on the handle as I go, and then I'll wrap it again with actual print media so you can see how it looks in real life. So pre-stretch and shrink for this handle, there's a few ways you can do it. You can grab the piece of vinyl, and a lot of times people will pin it to a bench and heat the whole thing. Well, this is actually one way we used to do it. Pin it to a bench, heat it, stretch it. You might even have two people pulling on the vinyl and stretching it sideways, pulling it straight down so you get lengthwise stretch and stretch to the width. This is a bit of a hybrid technique. Because it's me on my own as well, I'm going to do a bit of pre-stretch that I can with just my two hands. Then I'm going to hook it onto the panel, and with it anchored on the handle, with it anchored on the handle, I'm going to continue to add stretch. So it's a bit of a hybrid. It's not traditional pre-stretch and shrink, but it is utilizing that, and you'll see what I mean. So now you may not have the best shot of me heating the film, but you can see it a bit there. So I'm going to heat the top half. And I'm just wanting the film to stretch and grow a little bit sideways, really, because I'm going to add the majority of the lengthways stretch on the handle. So I'm going to stretch that and hold it till it sort of cools down. Then I want to hook the film onto the front. And make sure that it's tucked. Down around the front. I'm going to release some of the vinyl. Now you will notice that the handle was already wrapped. That's not a conventional thing to wrap over another wrap, but in this instance, I like that one. I don't want to take it off. It's a good demo piece to show. So that's now stretched and just hooked onto the corner. Get the handheld. So at the moment, it's only really applied just there, but I do want the film to have the ability to go under at this point. I don't want to pin it on the top and pull it round. So now I'm going to add a bit more stretch and pull it this way, straight down the length of the handle.
So a couple of questions, Cal. Do you need to take the handles off the vehicle before you wrap? And do you always wrap door handles? So
great questions. Yeah, I should have
prefaced
that at the start. So, well, last question first. No, I don't always wrap door handles. I am a big fan of not wrapping door handles, actually. If you can avoid it, it's a good idea there. Look, it really depends on the design. Generally, as a general rule, there are exceptions. We used to not wrap black handles, even if they were black painted, just because black is so often a good color to blend into a design. It doesn't really stand out. In some instances, we would actually order door handles. We did this a lot for Ford Rangers. People would come in with the top model, and I think they were chrome, or it might not have been the Ranger, but some of the handles came in chrome, which they're a pain to wrap. Doesn't really stick that well to the chrome plastic. So we would order the basic base model black handles and just factor that in to the cost, pull out their chrome handles and just put that black plastic handle back in, which sort of has that stippled matte texture to it. And, you know, you just charge them just the cost price really, because it doesn't add much work for you and saves you wrapping 4 door handles. No, you can't do this exact technique while the handle is on. I would almost never wrap a handle on. So it's either coming off and getting wrapped, or it's not getting wrapped. If you're wrapping the handle on, there would have to be a sort of specific reason why. They're probably, maybe it's a promotion. So for a short-term job, it's just in and out. You can wrap it quickly. If you're doing a wrap of that caliber, you're probably just trimming it, and you're not pre-stretching, shrinking that handle. You're just patching it on, because it'll probably be fine for whatever that purpose is. So yes, not always, but if you have to and you've got the door handle off, this is how I do it. So if you go back to main camera, Cohen, I'm going to show you on this outer side here first. So I've added a bit of stretch. Now I'm going to draw all over this one. I've added the stretch this way. The corner is pinned. Now you can see all this build up here, all these lines. I need to deal with that. I need to sort that out. Some of that is going to shrink up, but a lot of it isn't. And I'm going to need to send that backwards as well. I'll show you sort of how I do that. The main thing I want to stress is that I want, at all times, I want this front to stay relaxed. And I'm always pulling back and around and away from the front. So I'm going to add a bit of heat here while I'm holding the film, but this is, I'm not pulling on it. I'm just supporting it while I heat it. Now you'll see that it did flatten out a little bit, but it's not all gone. So I'm pulling down, sort of pulling on this angle here, and then wrapping around that way to make that corner hug nicely. And when I do this, I'm going to keep sending the ripples back. So if I smooth this down, you can see the front area is now nice and flat, but I've still got ripples further back. I'm going to just keep sending those backwards, warm a bit further back, and again pulling down and slightly away from the front. And I am actually adding a bit of tension now. Now I'm actually at an interesting point. I'm at the curve where the handle starts to change shape again. And that is exactly what I want, where I want that build up to go. So even though it looked like there was a lot of excess vinyl, that little curve will absorb it and help it go around the corner. So I will do this again with proper vinyl, just so you know, but I just wanted to show you the directions and the angle. And if you switch back to the other side, Cohen, I'll show this side. Hopefully it looks okay without the texture lines on it. Hopefully it focuses. Okay, so again, adding a bit of heat to that bit, holding it to support it. But I'm really not pulling too much. You can see when I let that go, it doesn't spring back or anything. But like I said before, you can have multiple goes at this. So if I'm not happy, I just pin it, lift it up, do it again. And I'll warm this bit, and I'll sort of, because I've got 2 hands free now, I'm going to do it. And I'm sort of pulling down and spreading out those little ripples. And you can see it's starting to crease up there, but that's okay, because I know that this corner will absorb that. So actually, I'll show you what that looks like. I'll wrap under now.
So what Cal's actually showing us today is a couple of questions on there. But Cal's not suggesting that this is a method or an action you need to do for every vehicle. It is showing you an extreme case where if a customer's got a high-end vehicle or they really want no paint to be showing on the vehicle, this is the process that you would use. Standard wraps when you're wrapping a vehicle. Cal, the question was, do you take the door handles off? I guess the answer there might be yes if it's easy. If not, then you're going to have to work around them.
Yeah.
Generally, sorry, Cal.
I was going to say, generally, I would say if you're taking door handles off and wrapping them, then I would wrap them this way to this standard, because it's a bit of a oxymoron to be taken off and wrapping handles, but not doing them to a high standard, because why go to the effort then of even taking them off? So if they're coming off and getting wrapped, I do them quite as well as I can. But the other option is they don't get wrapped. And that could be you make the design in such a way that either you incorporate the color of the door handle or take them and get them painted. I don't know what everybody's options are. We did that sometimes. We would just send them to the painter. If you've got a good relationship with the auto painter, great. It might not be feasible for everyone.
And the other question was, is not necessary. So, okay, you're wrapping a vehicle. If you can get the door handles off, it's far easier to wrap a door with the door handles off. Yes?
Yes. Actually, that's a great point, Neil. Yeah. I would take door handles off even if I'm not wrapping them.
Yeah.
So that to make the door itself easier. Yes, really good point. Look, in the higher end cars, modern cars these days with keyless entry are getting harder and harder to take apart because there's wires that go into handles. You sometimes take off door trims. Some people do that every single day. They just refuse to not take the handles out. Other people find workarounds. It depends on what your business is, what your market is, and what your customers expect. So yeah, this is not every single handle you have to do this way. But I like to show this because I can wrap these handles in one piece. And it's also an exercise in what you can do with film. And it's not just specific to this handle, but a lot of the reasons that these things work with moving the build up and sending it into a curved area, those are relevant across other panels as well. So I like this exercise because it shows how complex a shape you can wrap without adding crazy stretch to the film. And so
I hear you talking about reading the vinyl and sending the creases. This is what this and this is
Absolutely.
Something you can practice at home, take into your workshop at any time. What Cal's trying to use this as a tool to say, okay, how can you develop your skills? Because you'll use this skill to send vinyl and wrinkles away in a front valance or a bumper.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
So once you know, it's always about moving the build up. And in this instance, when I say build up, I mean anywhere where the vinyl is wrinkled, because that's essentially, there's more vinyl there than there is panel for it to go on. So it ends up wrinkling up. The opposite of build up is tension. So picture the vinyl bridged across a door. You've taken the door handle off, you put the vinyl off over it, it's covered over the door cup. And as you start to push in, the vinyl goes nice and tight and you can hit it, sounds like a drum. That vinyl is under tension. That's the exact opposite of what's happening here. There's build up here. An important thing to know is that the two complement each other. So, and this is exactly what's happening here on a very small scale. Normally, if I just wrap this corner, it's going to start to create tension as it goes under. There's still excess there now because I haven't gone right around the corner. But anywhere where the vinyl is prone to popping out, it's because there's tension. So it doesn't pop because there's too much vinyl, it pops because there's not enough. So you can use areas of tension or that create tension to absorb buildup. So that's exactly what I did when I was sending this vinyl back and away from this corner. I'm taking the vinyl from the front and sending it into this corner or this curve under here, which you'll see in a moment will absorb. And as I go around, these wrinkles will disappear. So that theory, while it doesn't always happen in the exact way you're seeing it on this handle, it does transfer and I think about it on everything I wrap. I'm always looking at the panel and looking which areas are going to bunch up on me, and which areas are going to create tension, and I send the vinyl that's going to bunch, and I think about the direction of my squeegee strokes, and I send them left or right or whichever way. So I think I can actually show you that after this. I can kind of give you a practical example on the ILO door. But I'll continue, I'll push on this. So I'm going to drop this camera as low as I can, just to get up and under. So I want to just look at.
So Cal, probably a question. I mean, you're stopping and you're talking and we're asking you questions. But if this was a commercial job, or not a commercial job, but a color change job, for instance, and you had to take 4 door handles off a vehicle and wrap them like this, how long would that take you under normal circumstances? Now you've perfected your skills. Yeah,
that's a good question. Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up color change. Obviously, we're just doing digital print today, but we all know color change is something that you guys will be doing as well. And generally, if it is color change, that means it's a high standard. Like, you don't really do low-end color changes. So if it's color change, absolutely handles are going to be off, and I would be doing this technique with color change film. And a full set of door handles might take a couple of hours. You may get it under 2 hours once you're good at it. The first 4 that you do may take you 4 hours. It really depends on your proficiency. But generally, handles are something that we, back at Exotic Graphix, we didn't rush. Whoever was on door handles sort of just sat down and you got left alone just to do them, because if they fail, it looks bad. That's a point that everybody notices. It's a point that you touch with your hands. So if it does wrinkle or the vinyl does peel up, you can feel it sometimes without even looking at the handle. So areas of high use and things like that, you want to get right. So yeah, I'd say 2 hours.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. Cal, we just have someone with their hand up. Thomas, I'll just allow them to talk.
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
Oh, no, he just put it down. No worries, continue.
Oh, okay, that's a good point. If anybody does want to say something, they're more than welcome to. So I'm just going to keep going under this bit here. I'm going to just warm this film while supporting it, and just let the vinyl sort of settle, do what it needs to do. And then I'm going to I do have to add a little bit of tension to help get it around the corner. But then what happens is, once it goes round, it absorbs all that tension. Now I know it's kind of in a shadow there, so what I'll actually do is I'm going to pop the handle off the jig here. So can you go, oh, there we go. So you can see that inner corner there. And I'll just heat a bit more and push a bit more around. So sorry guys, this is sort of hard to know that I'm in front of the camera while I'm looking.
Yeah, all good, Cal, you can see perfectly.
Piece. So I just sort of smooth that and help it around, and you'll see as I go around, it actually has absorbed all of that. So I'm just a little cut there. Now what I want to do, so even though it absorbed almost all of that vinyl, it still actually gets to a point where it still needs a bit more. So then what I have to do is release the film up here and then turn this top bit to bring even more down into there. So just rest this. Yeah, let's see if I can show you this in one nice angle. So again, I'm going to warm this, And then as I wrap this bit in, I'm going to pull, and I'm not really stretching that. I'm just sort of rolling my fingertip in to get it to go all the way in there. If I'm not happy with that, I just lift it back up. Now I should actually add as well, I don't always insist on doing handles in one piece. So again, this is a bit of an exercise to see what's achievable. So here I've got to halfway. So if you can see that line under there, that is the line that I wrapped on the panel on the piece underneath. So I'm at the halfway point. So now I could trim that and get the other, do the same on the other side and overlap it. You don't have to do that. And 90% of the time I wouldn't wrap in one piece. So if I was going to do a shortcutted version of that, I would trim, actually I'll just do it. I'd trim the film off to one side. Always snap your blade. Just do the cut in two pieces, you guys. And then I would add a patch over top. So I'd trim it to about there on both sides so that it's on the back. The main point is I want it completely on the back edge. I don't want the joint to come up to the side. So you might do that, cut on both sides, and then just put a flat piece of vinyl across it to patch over it. And that sort of seals the other bits on. So that's probably a more realistic way. But the technique for doing the tops and getting these corners doesn't change. I still want to be conscious of that. I definitely don't want to stretch the film in there. I want to send a lot of build up to that corner because that is a sort of point of concern, if you will, or a point that could want to pop. So if anybody's got any questions, I'm going to do it again now. I'm going to just do it without drawing on it. And I'm going to use a piece of colored vinyl so that we can actually, or not colored, printed vinyl.
So while Cal's getting set up for that, maybe this is part two. We did one session last week. We've done today, and obviously there's going to be future sessions. So maybe in the chat, ask us, point out to us what you would like Callum to try and do next. Limitations are that obviously he doesn't have every body part of every vehicle lying around his workshop, or if there's a tip or a trick that you'd like him to talk about today or next time, please just put them back in the chat as well while we're thinking about that. And Cal, again, somebody's asked, do you recommend using primer on the back of the handles where you've overlapped?
Yeah, I wouldn't. That might be an exception to the rule where, if you feel if that makes you feel more comfortable, I can understand why you would put it there. I just try to avoid it purely because, well, just one of the main reasons is if you do have to be the one that removes it, as you know, removing vinyl that's been primed is just a nightmare. So I don't, but you could put a bit on the back of a handle. But you shouldn't need.
So I think in general terms, our recommendation is you don't need primer. And if you do, it's because there's something wrong with the base material that you're wrapping to.
That's right. But I understand there's situations where due to time pressure or budget where you don't have the time to do things in always the best possible way. So if that is the case, maybe you have to.
So I think for the next session, Cal, you need to take a bumper off, or we need to find a dry day when you can crawl around underneath the front of one of your cars, because bumpers keeps coming up as an opportunity.
Yes, bumpers is going to be something that I'll tackle. Absolutely. Now, one of my cameras has dropped off. That's okay. I'm going to stop video on that one. All right. So I'm just using this camera and my handheld for this. So is everybody happy with what we've done so far? I'm just going to push on and just quickly wrap it with a bit of printed vinyl. And this will help sort of illustrate any you know, and I don't claim that there's going to be zero distortion. There is going to be some movement in the lines. Actually, just before I wrap it, I'll show you on the handheld that this piece is again done in one piece, and that's including the back. And I don't, again, it's got a little chip there from me dropping it, but I don't recommend that you wrap the back. I'll actually show you. I would patch that. In fact, I'll quickly throw a patch on there now. So all I do when I patch the film is patch the handle. I'm going to put a bit of vinyl on the back, as you can see here, and put this on first, and then I'm going to trim it to the highlights. So this is going to be a bit too tricky to show. So I'm just going to do it, and then I'll show you on the handheld. And the reason I patch first is because I want the little edge of the vinyl to be hidden on the highlight. I used to patch second, and that was sort of to hold the film onto the handle, but I find it doesn't actually give as good of a finish. And especially if you are doing a gloss film, doing little joins like this, they're always almost invisible. Gloss just joins so well when you hide on highlights. Matte is a bit harder, of course. All right, very, very quick patch. You can see I've just put a bit of film on the back edge there and just trimmed it right onto the highlight. I haven't trimmed the bottom bit yet, but you get the idea. All right. So back to this camera, I'll just see if you can heat the film, get a bit of sideways stretch. Pin it on. And then heat and pull to get the rest of the linear stretch, if you will. And you will probably want to, it's going to ripple up on the top. So then you pull out sideways. That's to flatten out. Softening the film to relax it at the front. I'm just going to sort of do this in as shorter go as I can. So I'm sort of pulling the whole lot and spreading it and sending it all backwards, which the goal is to make the film there as nice and smooth as I can. I'll show you that again in a bit. So then send it all into this corner. Now on the back, it's pretty much the same, but the opposite. So I'm going to heat the back and pull down and forward, because I want it to hug that back corner. Even though I've patched it, I still want to get the corners nice. And you can see here, I've got that bit of build-up, which is just going to help heat, will guide around, and it'll get absorbed, just like that front corner did. I'll quickly do the other side, which you might be able to see, but I'll just smash that on. All right, that's the bulk of that wrapped. I'm going to take this off. I haven't, of course, finished it. Let's see. So, got it some of the way in there, front and back. And I'll just trim off all my excess.
Question, Cal. Do the natural oils in your fingers compromise the film while you're applying it?
That's a good question. I mean, I try not to. So where I grab the film, I try not to hold the adhesive side where it's going to be laid. So holding, as long as you're out by 20 or 30 mil, that part won't actually stay on the handle, if that makes sense. That's going to...
You're using the excess rather than the actual piece that you're applying.
Yes. There are instances where, as we all probably know, you do have to grab the film. I would just say, yeah, the cleaner your hands are, the better. Yes, if it's a really hot day and you're sweating all over the place, it absolutely can cause issues. So just do be aware of that, and do try to sort of minimize that. But not generally, not for most things. It's not an issue. Okay, I'll just wrap this other side in. I'll trim this and we'll start to get a better view of what I'm doing. Okay, so that's the center cut out. And I'm just going to trim off most of the excess and leave the last little bit. And I'll show you sort of how I tuck that under. So does anybody here love doing handles? Anybody really hate doing handles? Some people love them. I quite enjoy them. I like the sort of fiddly stuff. Not everybody does though.
Get a sense that you love handles, Cal.
Beg your pardon?
I get a sense that you love handles. Okay, yeah. Somebody says, yeah, I like them. I like the challenge. I think that's why you like them, Cal.
That's right. That's right. So you can see there, I've trimmed off the excess. You don't have to trim this first, but I just wanted you to be able to see what I was doing. I'm going to now heat up the front and just let any of that, anything that was stretched while it's hanging in midair should shrink out of that. And then when I tuck these, I'll actually use the hard end of the squeegee. Let's help that little ripple. And I'll sort of just push the film. I want it to be the nice firm sort of tuck right with that firm edge under the lip. And then once it's on the back, I personally don't mind if it starts to crease on the back, because you've done, it's got where it needs to go to. And it's virtually impossible to wrap the whole thing all the way on the back as well, because it's turning just so many corners. So if you can see, I know, hopefully that shows up. You can see that I am on, the vinyl is on the back edge and it's relaxed. So because it was laid down, it was left hanging, it was heated and not pulled, which means any stretch that was in it shrinks out of it, and I've laid it onto the back. You can see here, and I'd probably not be happy with this on any other day, but because I did this quite quickly, there's a couple little ripples on the inside of that corner, but they're not on the face. They're not on the visible part of the handle. So ultimately I am happy with that. Another thing you'll notice, have a look at the lines. So this is printed, this is the same print as the bigger panel, just scaled way down. So these squares are about 15 mil wide. And you can see there is some distortion. There's always going to be a little bit, but it's not drastic. And there's no color dropout. That's also really important. And now I'll just quickly show you on the back. So I put that patch down, or that inlay, and I've wrapped the back over it. I'm just going to heat and relax all of this, and then I'm going to do the trim. So I just want to make sure that film is stuck on, relaxed, and then cooled down. I'll just let it cool for a moment. It's not a good idea to trim while the vinyl's hot. I'm sure everybody's tried it. You know what happens, it goes a bit like bubble gum. So now the inlay is underneath this up until that line. So I'm just going to trim a couple mil onto the back. And this part, of course, will be hidden. Now, you would not patch and wrap this handle with such a crazy print and expect the inlay to line up again. If this was color change, you would not even see that second edge. And the first edge, the underside edge, is hidden because I put it right where the light reflects anyway. You can see it a little bit. I didn't get it perfect, but does that make sense? Does anybody already patch handles like that? Or patch or inlay handles like that? Is anybody already doing that? And then again, on the sides.
Maybe Thomas has, because he says he's wrapped his door handle 5 times through lockdown. So
right.
It's Thomas a few millimeters wider.
Because you enjoy doing it, or you've had to redo it because you weren't happy with it?
I think it might be a lockdown fever. Isn't that
Lockdown
right, Thomas?
fever. So now, again, I've just pushed the film in onto the back edge, and then you can trim it wherever you want on the back. And then I would put I won't do it now, but you could put knifeless tape on both those edges and put a patch across there, or you could pre-cut, whatever you want to do. Pre-cut a patch to seal off both of those edges. You don't have to add the patch. It just, sometimes it is slightly visible if you look down over the top of the door handle. So I like to cover it off. And that part, of course, sits next to the other part of the door. So it only is visible for 2 seconds while the handle's pulled open. So is anybody, and actually you can see on the back, those lines there, even when they went into the corner there, haven't distorted too much. And you can actually see those squares have been pulled into a bit more of a diamond shape, but it's pretty uniform. And again, you're unlikely to be wrapping a handle with such a detailed print on it. Well, you should avoid it. If you do have a design with detailed print, maybe you just do the handles in black, or just try to design it so that no stripes or lines go right across the handle, because that just adds a challenge that you don't need. So has anybody got any other questions on door handles before I move on?
Thomas's feedback. Thomas, that's really good. If you started learning, practice. I think, Cal, you even though that you're at the level you are, I know that you're always wrapping things in your spare time. That's it.
And always learning as well. And I know, you know, and Justin Pate is great at this, or the Rap Institute slogan is never stop learning. And it's absolutely true. I still do things and make new realizations and tweak techniques based on what I come up against. So I'm not stuck in my ways, and you know, I hope that you guys learn a bit from this. You don't have to take every single bit of what I've done. Maybe you already do most of it and you just learn a little tweak. And if you've got a way that works really well for you, I'd love to hear about it as well. So you can reach out to me after this if you're happy to share that. I always love learning what people are doing. So I'm going to move. Yeah, Neil, did you want to say anything?
No, yeah, I was going to say you were 9:30, Cal, so I don't know if you're moving on to something else that's been requested.
Well, is everybody still engaged? I do have another thing I wanted to cover off, which is
Tell us
actually,
what that is.
yeah, so it wasn't technically in the list, but it's actually come up. And that is an extension of what I was saying on the door handles of moving build up into areas of tension. So just bear with me while I adjust this. I'm going to jump up onto this top corner here. I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to wrap this corner. How you can use squeegee technique to either help, or if you do it wrong, to hinder what you're doing. So let me grab a piece of film. So this is really an extension on how to wrap corners. So I'm not going to use pre-stretch and shrink as much for this, but these technically are variations on corners. So here we've got a couple of different corners. We've got this inner one. Now this isn't specifically a recess demonstration. These corners just so happen to curve and move the way that I can demonstrate. So this corner has like an outer curve, a convex curve, because it goes around and in. These corners are concave because they dip in. So the vinyl that is going to go over this bit is going to want to bunch up and have ripples as it goes in. And the vinyl here, as you can imagine, is going to be tensioned across there and is going to need stretch to go in. So that's going to have tension. This is going to have buildup. So I'm just going to show you two different ways to approach these. We're going to start with the outer one. So if let's just, and again, you're going to use your imagination. This is a full piece, a full side print. The light is okay. So first way I'm going to do is, I guess, the wrong way. But you'd be forgiven for doing it. It's not evident that it's the wrong way right off the bat. So if I was to just hit the highlight here, which is pretty common, actually take a step back. We're pretending this isn't, forget what I said before. We're pretending this isn't a whole eyelid panel. I just realized that I confused two different things. We're pretending this is just a concave curve that could be anywhere. So if a corner comes up to you, it might not be this stark, but it might just have a dip in it. As long as it goes in, this technique applies. So rather than just going flat around the outside and then trying to push in, you can see, you just catch the light and see the flat bit there. It's bridged right across and it's pretty much flat. For me to go in, I'm going to need to add heat and work it in. What I can do is with my squeegee strokes, I can help that. So I can actually really intentionally send vinyl inwards. Now, I would never normally on a flat panel apply and bring the film into the middle. And in fact, if you saw my last webinar, I did a bit of basic squeegee technique and I use this as an example of what not to do on a flat panel. But on this, I'm doing this on purpose because I actually want build up. Now, can you see? I'll get the handheld as well for this. You can see, there we go, the ripples there. So that's not good 90% of the time, or it's not what I want to see when I'm wrapping a flat panel or applying on a flat panel. But in this instance, because I've got a corner coming up, and importantly a concave corner, not convex, I'm doing this intentionally. So I'll just keep going, and you'll see what I mean once I get to the corner. So I'm pushing the film into the middle, and to the point where I'm actually just put a little crease in it because there's that much build up. So because of that, I need to, and that's not a problem either, because I can just relax that back. This is a good time to mention one of my many mottos or slogans. There's nothing wrong with getting a crease, but there is something wrong with leaving a crease. So a lot of people will get creases. I still get creases. Doesn't mean you don't know what you're doing or there's a problem. But if you get a crease and just ignore it and keep going, well, I'd say that's a problem. Creases are fixable 90% of the time, especially with SLX Plus. It's super forgiving. So now I'll bring the handheld back up. You can see I got to the corner and the ripples on the flat have gone away. And now I have play. That vinyl isn't tight because all that buildup, in fact, you can see it. I can push it and get it onto that back edge relatively easily. So that extra vinyl that I would have turned into a crease got absorbed by this corner. So this is really a bigger version of what you saw on that handle. At the front, there was bunch up, there was lines, and I sent them into that little curve. Basically the same principle. I've taken excess vinyl from here and sent it to there. Now that makes this easier. It means I need less stretch to go into that recess. So I'm going to just chuck a wrap glove on for a second and just see how far I can actually naturally get that film to go before I need to add heat. You know what, I reckon. Now, I don't recommend that you do things like this. I need a bit of heat, a bit of force. So I wouldn't say wrap a recess without heat, but I got that all the way to the back edge. Not all the way down, but that is wrapped all the way in there now with zero heat and virtually zero stretch and not even noticeable. The only distortion is because of the lines twist inwards, but they don't actually distort as such, and no loss of color. So then, of course, you could add just a tiny bit of heat and finish that quite easily. So that shows the power that you have with your squeegee. And I'll do this quickly again with another bit of vinyl. You can also do this the wrong way, so unintentionally. If you really... Now, some people I've seen purposefully do this, and I can understand why. They'll tension the film across a high point. And I can kind of get that because it feels, you want to, start with a nice, beautifully glassed piece of film. Like this here is, I've tensioned it outwards and sideways and across that way. And that there looks really nice. You'd say that that piece is virtually glassed. So I can understand why people start corners like this. And then the smoother the film is, generally the sturdier it is when you wrap in. It's hard to wrap into recesses when it's rippling up. It's easy when it's smooth. And adding a bit of heat, you can absolutely stretch that in. I'd prefer to just work a little bit harder, and rather than, if you can eliminate or reduce needing to stretch the film, I think that's a good thing. Doesn't mean you have to be scared of heat and never use heat, but let the vinyl work for you. So yeah, now you can see for me to push that in, I'm going to have to introduce heat. Nothing fundamentally wrong with that, but I'd rather the vinyl falls in there and then I just add a bit of heat to finish it off. So does that make sense to everyone? Anybody got any questions on that outer corner before I move on to the inner one, the convex one? Camera.
Silence is golden so far, Cal. Nobody's
Excellent.
and everybody's still here, so that's already good.
Excellent. Okay, so this next one, I'm going to wrap just this inside bit, or not really wrap, just apply to this inside bit. I've just used the same piece of vinyl, but that's okay. So if I just apply apply this normally on the face here. Nothing majorly wrong. But if I was to try and apply this around the corner, I'm just doing this sort of roughly, but for illustrative purposes. I'm sure you can even see that on the first camera, and I'll go to the handheld as well. You can see how that bunches up going around the corner. And that is just the nature of convex curves. I mean, picture, the analogy I always use is picture trying to wrap a piece of paper around a basketball. You don't even have to understand anything about wrapping. Everybody can just visualize what's going to happen to that bit of paper. So any curve like that, the vinyl goes around and it bunches up. So to help negate that, now you can, again, introduce heat and I'd be able to wrap that, get it onto the next panel and keep going. But I'd rather make the film work for me and use a bit of squeegee technique to help make that corner better. So what I'm going to do is the opposite. In fact, I'll grab a fresh piece. I'm going to do the opposite technique to, so what is the correct technique on the outer corner is the incorrect technique for the inner corner. Just to confuse things. So instead of creating extra build-up like I did, I want to take the vinyl away. So instead of sending the vinyl inwards to the corner, I'm going to start this quite a way back. I'm going to really aggressively take vinyl away. So picture this as like the center line through that corner. I'm going to take vinyl away from the corner. Now, this might not be super obvious. So can you see this little ripple here came from over here? So that might not seem like much, but when I do that over and over again, I'll just show you again. Oh, sorry, switch back to the other one, Callum. It's a bit hard. I don't have enough hands. So here, I'm going to hook the squeegee in and really intentionally pull, create a ripple. Now, this is a bit of a balancing act. This comes down to experience with the squeegee technique and the angle. So if I go too sharp of an angle, I'm going to crease that. If I go too slight of an angle, I'm not going to move it. So I'm constantly sort of wiggling the squeegee around to find the right angle. But again, can you see that little ripple over here came from over here? So same as I'm doing it from halfway up, I'm going to go halfway down. And hopefully that, yeah, just see that in the reflection. There's a nice big pointy ripple there. Again, vinyl that was in the middle is now moved to the outside. Now there's going to come a limit to this. You can't get too aggressive with how much you're taking out. So yeah, this comes through trial and error. But I do recommend people practice with this technique. A little bit more to go. Now, I don't know if you can see here, but this film is, just need to relax that. It's not sitting flat anymore. You can see that ripple in it, it's sort of puckered up. That is similar, and I tie this back to the Mazda guard corner that I did. So I've created this shape not with stretch and not with my thumb like I did on the other corner, but that sort of not sitting flat, that pucker wanting to sort of naturally hang back a bit, was created by the squeegee techniques spreading out. So now when I go around the corner, still going to want to bunch up a bit, but it's nowhere near as bad. And then I'll just add a lick of heat. Again, always taking away from the corner. So this is where I like to use heat to relax the film, but not stretch it. So another thing I cover off is the differences in heating. And I'll give this a bit of slack so that as I'm tucking the film, it's not fouling, it's not touching on the other panel. And I'm tucking the corner and moving away and out. So now so this is a really important distinction. There's still a few ripples, but they are not on the corner. They're on the flat. So as long as you get to the valley, and I hope you know what I mean. I talk about peaks and valleys and that. The valley is once it's down right to the bottom and out. It's reached the valley and I'm smooth sailing after that. If these ripples were coming up on the corner, I'd have reason for concern because they can sort of pop there. But on the flat, there's, it's far less likely that anything's going to go wrong. So I'll show you, once it's on the flat, I can help get all those little ripples out with a little bit of heat. And again, I don't do this to stretch it overly. I will add just a tiny bit of tension. And once you start to get the start of those ripples out, they will magically just fade away. And this is not overstretching by any means. Just help them get started, squeegee, and then you can switch to your glove. So go back to the handheld, and then you can see that's nice and smooth now, and you can continue on. And so have a look at that line in the squares. Very, very little distortion and no heat used to stretch this. I did introduce heat to relax the film, but there was no stretch put there. So that has absolutely zero chance of popping out of there. I've laid that in rather than stretched it in. Excellent. I just saw someone saying this is what I do on deep crevices on bumpers. Perfect. Yeah, bumpers is definitely something that I want to try and cover and work out how to do that. But yeah, again, bumpers, I'm always looking at where the deep parts are, looking at where I can borrow vinyl from. You can always borrow vinyl. I say borrow, you can use vinyl that you've stretched across a convex area, and you can give that to a concave area, because a convex area will never pop. The vinyl is like the outside of a mirror. It never pops in the middle of the mirror because it's held on by the rest of it. It can lift at the edges, but that's different. But the inner part of a recess, the deep parts of this, absolutely can pop out, but it never pops on the highlight, on the convex curve, only on the concave curve. So yeah, always looking at, and this is exactly, it's a bigger version of what I did on the door handle, taking the vinyl, moved it away from the corner, and then the relative corners have absorbed either the tension or the buildup. So what does everyone think about that? We're coming up to the 2-hour mark. I'll just bring my camera back out. Excuse me for the close-up. Does anybody have...
Sorry, Callum. Yeah. Guess what we should ask is what have people learned from today? What would they take away from this today to take back to their shop, and when they're allowed back to the shop, maybe? Yeah. Well, do we want to? I mean, I know we've still got a few people on. Do we want to just do a bit of a Q&A? I'm happy just to answer some questions now. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Hey, Carl. We had a question earlier.
Yes.
So this is back on the Mazda panel. How would you approach the corner if the panel was still on the car and you don't have the same access?
That's a really good question. I actually do the exact same thing, and this is why doing the corner with the vinyl pointing back at you is such an advantage. So I'll just bring the camera down. It's not going to be the perfect view. Where are we? So there, this piece off. Let's use this as that piece again. So by doing the pre-stretch off the panel, when I say off the panel, I mean folded back this way. So this is why I don't, there's absolutely zero chance of you pulling down and around, because this corner meets the front bar and the headlight's right there. So you cannot get your hands like this if the panel's on. You still can though do this. So this is facing outwards towards me. And the whole thing, stretching and pinning it. And applying the flat. So now, again, this film is puckered out back at me, if you will. Now I would give it a bit of a relax while it's in midair. And let the film relax. So again, I still have full access to all of this because I'm outside of that's coming towards me. Then I would release some of my excess. So be careful not to get too close because some of this film may still have a bit of shrink in it. And when you go down to the corner, I often will release it like that, leaving more on the sides and getting a bit closer on the corner. Then it would come down to the tools that you're using. So the one that I've just reached to grab is, I've got another one I'd probably use first, but this is a Yellow Tools tucking tool. This little end here is really nice and fine. I've got one that's a bit flatter, it's like a mini squeegee. You guys might have Avery tools, you might have, there's a bunch of other tools that do the job, but we recommend Yellow Tools.
Cobra tools, which computer lets out.
Okay, perfect. So then it's a case of just caressing the film on. So you can't get in and behind and pull, but you can use this tool and tuck, and it will flop in there as far as it can go. And then it's a case of, I'll be holding the top, and I probably would tape the headlight so that the vinyl doesn't stick and grab to it. And then I would be still doing the same technique, but not pulling behind. I'd be holding outwards and sending the vinyl like that. And then get your knife in and trim it. If the panel is, so I couldn't have done what I just did, I would need to pop the film back out if I need to have another go and heat it and caress it around just with the tip of one of these tools. And I'll do a close-up so you can see how that looks. The other thing is, when the panel's on, you generally don't need to go as far. Well, first of all, you can't go as far, but also the panels start touching to the next one, and as long as you get your trim nicely in there. So I haven't gone all the way. It's not a perfect corner, but if the other panels were there, it would be absolutely fine. For me, it's just getting it round the first part. If I can get onto that back edge, I'm happy, basically. So I hope that answers your question. So the technique, the build up to it always stays the same. Whether I've got the panel on or off, I do that pre-stretch the same way. And it is something that I haven't seen a lot of other people do, is doing the technique where the vinyl folds back out at you. A lot of people will pull it round and do the stretch away from themselves. And it might work, it might be fine, but for me, in my mind, I want the film not touching the panel. I want it back at me, so all the shrink happens in midair, and then I bring it back around. So that's how I do that. Yes, Computer Letter, sell a bunch of great tools. Should have led with
Yes. No, that's all good. So Cal, that's it's 10 o'clock. I think what we'll do, if there's no further questions or if there's any late questions, we'll pick them up and we'll answer them directly.
Yep.
So in closing, anything you want to say in closing on this? It's, I think one of the things, Cal, keep learning and never stop learning.
Keep learning. I do like to always remind people, these are my preferred techniques. These are what I think is the best way to do it, but it's not the only way. I don't profess that I have the best way. I think they work great. They're the best for me. Some techniques do change depending on even just the size of you. I know people, I can easily strip the whole backing of a 1500 wide print and put it on. Not everybody can do that if you don't have the arm span. There's heaps of reasons why you can't do some techniques due to various reasons. So take what you can from it, adjust, tweak, improvise, experiment, and I hope you've taken something out of it. Please give me feedback as well. I'd love to hear from you guys, and we'll reach out to some of the questions that didn't get covered and try to cover them off. And I'm cal.arlon on Instagram, and also follow Arlon Graphix _ANZ on Instagram as well. It's a great way, if you don't already, to catch up on all our updates. Thanks, everyone. Neil, have you got anything else?
No,
we covered off a lot there.
You've covered off a lot, and we'll come back shortly with Computer Letter for the next session.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great weekend. Take care. Thanks, Cohen.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Cal, and thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Cohen. Take care.